So the question comes, is the prognosis of HFrEF is different in Indian patients? Look at the data. The mean age of patients in global data, mean age of patient is almost 73 years. In hospital mortality is 3.8%. Post-discharge mortality, that is 6 months, is almost 8.6%. Contrary, you look at the Indian data. The mean age of hospitalization is 53 years. In hospital mortality is 30.8%. And post-discharge mortality up to 6 months is 26.3%. So what is important is that patients with heart failure in India are at younger age, have very high mortality and morbidity even after discharge. There have been 23% of Indian patients with heart failure who die within a year of diagnosis. So despite being in the youngest cohort at baseline, patients in Africa and India had the highest mortality. In the analysis of cause-specific mortality, we noted that for cardiac deaths alone, patients in India were at highest hazard of cardiac deaths. The survival rate for heart failure are worse than for most cancers, as I have already told in the previous slides. There are at least 8 to 10 million patients of heart failure in India. Use volume. Prevalence of heart failure is about 1% of adult population. Heart failure in India has a post-admission mortality of 20 to 30%. Medication adherence ranges from 25 to 50%. So this is very important. We must ensure maximum number of patients to be on GDMT, that is guideline directed medical therapy. India has a relatively very young population of heart failure. The incidence of diabetes in Trivandrum heart failure, which was one of the largest registry in India, had been 55% almost, and the incidence of hypertension has been 42%. So there are two sinister combination of hypertension and diabetes, which translate into heart failure. The 3 out of every 5 patients had died during 5-year follow-up, with median survival of approximately 3 years in this young cohort. Lack of GDMT in patients with HFrEF and frequent readmissions have been associated with very high mortality at 5 years. Only about 25% of patients were discharged from index hospitalization on GDMT. And importantly, the prescription of GDMT at discharge was associated with 5-year mortality rates in patients with HFrEF. So we must ensure that patient is on every possible medication which prevents mortality and morbidity. Interventions aimed at increasing guideline-directed therapy may improve heart failure outcomes in Indian patients. So what are the aims actually? The aim is to increase survival, reduce hospital admissions, and make people feel more better. So that is the ultimate aim in therapy for heart failure. When we say increased survival, then reducing mortality, premature deaths, ideally by reducing 2 main modes, that is sudden cardiac death and death from pump failure. Apart from being very unpleasant for patient, distressing for families, and costly, it had bad prognostic development, which is also true for any episode of worsening heart failure. Improving quality of life is very important. So it is not only the quantity, the number of years, but how they live is very important for these patients. Next.